Welcome to Waukesha Floral. Say it with flowers. Let's talk about the language of flowers. Hi, my name is Jane Lopnow. I'm here at Waukesha Floral today, and I want to welcome you to talk about the language of flowers. The language of flowers is something that I've talked about with many of my groups, and I really love talking about it. It's all about this very quiet language that developed over many periods of time. As you can see, we're live here in the flower shop, so occasionally we might get some disruptions too. It's all part of being in a busy, active flower shop. But it's a slow Sunday morning here, so we're going to allow that phone just to wait, and we will pick that up a little bit later. The language of flowers is based on ancient symbols from China, from Japan, from the Middle East, from mythologies, religions, recorded over time. The language of flowers has been used by poets, writers, artists. It's a very quiet language. I don't know if any of you have ever heard flowers talking to you. I know a lot of people talk to their plants, and that's a good thing, but usually they don't talk back to you. It was first introduced into Europe by the King of Sweden after he was exiled in Turkey for 5 years. This was about the early 1700s. The first published use of the term language of flowers did not happen until 1809. And of course, Queen Victoria, that style maven, the Martha Stewart of her time, was the one who introduced the language of flowers to her people in the British Empire back in the mid 1800s. The language of flowers didn't come into the United States until a little bit later. Published books like the Godey's book of women's ladies' book. It's the Godey's ladies' book that actually told women what they should be doing to be in style at that time was published. There were certain magazine articles and that type of thing. You know, of course, language right now, language is so instantaneous that we can get a message by text. You know, how many texts do you get in a day? Probably 100 or more. Back then, there was no such thing as instant language. And there was no such thing as women having the right to really talk. You didn't have the right to vote. Women were supposed to be taking care of the home and not really have a voice in society. So they spoke in other ways, and part of it was through flowers. You did not say your feelings out loud to anyone. You were able to convey your feelings through flowers, and flowers were a very popular gift back in the Victorian era. It was just etiquette that you did not talk about things that were hard to talk about at that time, but you might say it through flowers. Also, you think about Victorian times and how there really wasn't a lot of hygiene back in Victorian times. So flowers were something that were used because of their smell. People gave them to each other because they wanted something really pretty to smell and to get rid of some of the offensive smells of the day too. It was a way to communicate in a very discreet language. It was also important that you knew the language of flowers and you knew it in the same social circle that you were in. So if you gave someone a bouquet of flowers with a meaning, you wanted them to have the same meaning that you thought. So books like this, Kate Greenaway's Language of Flowers, were published back in the day. And that gave a beautiful book. It's got some wonderful illustrations in here. And it gave you all the language of not only flowers, but also the plants that were popular at that time. For instance, oak leaves mean bravery. Narcissus, you think of a daffodil, was egotism. And Narcissus actually developed into narcissism, which was like love of self. So a lot of these came about, like tulip, meaning fame. declaration of love. There are certain things like herbs that were used. You think of eucalyptus, and when you crush a eucalyptus leaf, you get that really strong, pungent odor to it. And that meant protection. So that odor was going to protect maybe your clothes from moths, or protect you from getting a sore throat, or something like that. The Victorian bouquets evolved from a very small nosegay to larger and larger bouquets. If you remember a bridal picture back from Victorian days, there were huge armloads of flowers with just showers of flowers coming down. And many of the bouquets contained flowers that were available on the local market, or flowers that people could pick at their homes. Things like white carnations, remember me, crocus, which meant joy, which, crocus, when you see a crocus coming up through the snow in winter, that really does give you some joy. Holly, we do have some hollies that grow around Wisconsin. It meant domestic happiness. Honeysuckle, which meant faithfulness. Ivy, fidelity. Purple lilac meant first love. White lilac, innocence. Lily of the valley was for purity. Orchids, you are beautiful. And of course, red roses, we all know what that means. I love you. Sage plants was domestic virtue, and the violet plant was modesty. Those were some very popular flowers and plants that were used around the Victorian period. And this show consists of myself and another wonderful woman who is our designer today. And right now she's my camera person too. But we're going to trade off, and she's going to show you a little bit more about the language of flowers in one of the beautiful bouquets that she's made for us today. So we're going to go over to Denise.
Good morning. My name is Denise Gerke, and I am the Creative Design Manager here at Waukesha Floral. Myself and Jane, are putting together the language of flowers for you. Jane is giving you all the insight, and I'm coming up with designs that have different meanings to them. Today, my first arrangement is a little something that I've called the Sleeping Beauty arrangement, because it has so many meanings, has so many hidden meanings inside of it. First, I've started with a terracotta, kind of antique-ish vase, back to the times of Sleeping Beauty and castles. And then we have, not only do flowers have meanings, but also fruits and vegetables that grow outside. Back in the Victorian days, all of these had particular meanings. And in this arrangement, I have a green apple and a red apple inserted into the arrangement. And I'm sure that you can guess, based on Sleeping Beauty, based on Adam and Eve, that the apple means temptation. So Adam and Eve were tempted by the apple, and in Sleeping Beauty, the witch tempted Sleeping Beauty with the apple. So, it's kind of a meaning that all of us know, and we all recognize it, but we just don't realize it because it's such a thing in everyday life. Another thing that has meaning in this arrangement is the hypericum berry. This is a green hypericum berry. It's a beautiful berry. It comes in multiple colors. It comes in white, bubblegum pink, red, and orange. And the meaning behind the hypericum berry is superstition. The other fun fact about hypericum berry is this is also St. John's wort, which is also very appropriate for the Sleeping Beauty arrangement, because St. John's wort is actually medicinal, and it helps for depression or sleeping disorders. Let's see, what other fun things do I have in here? There is also the red carnation. Just like roses the colors of the roses have different meanings, the colors of the carnations have various meanings also. And the red carnation is kind of like, alas, my poor heart. So someone just got a broken heart. So this has some some good meanings, and there's also some kind of broken-hearted meanings in here too. And then the other flower, which is another regular flower that we see all the time. This is actually called a Matsumoto aster. And they come in this really beautiful burgundy color. They also come in like a bubblegum pink, a really pretty violet purple. And this flower actually means afterthought. So it's kind of, this arrangement is kind of tells its own story with the flowers, that you have this temptation coming at you, and then you get a broken heart, and then all of a sudden you have an afterthought and you're looking back and at the past and kind of reviewing everything. So different floral arrangements definitely have different meanings, and some meanings can be good and some meanings can be not so good. So I think after this we're going to return it back to Jane in the studio.
Denise, that was a wonderful arrangement that you did, the Sleeping Beauty arrangement. I can imagine sending that to any princess, and she would certainly appreciate it. Back to the language of flowers, I wanted to mention Mother's Day. Mother's Day was this past weekend for us, a very popular holiday, especially this year. With the pandemic going on, there were a lot of people who were unable to visit Mom, and so they needed to send her flowers instead, and they did that. And we're very grateful for everyone who sent flowers to their mom this year. Holding up, this is really our low-tech version. Oh, the phone again. This is our low-tech version of Anna Jarvis. Anna Jarvis was an Appalachian nurse back in the early 1900s. She figured out a way to purify water for different troops that were going abroad. She was very, very inventive, and apparently her daughter wanted to recognize her, and by petitioning Congress, she asked for a day specifically for mothers. And so Woodrow Wilson, our president back in 1914, decided that the second Sunday in May should be devoted to mothers, and devoted to the best mother in the world, which is always going to be your mother. Typically recognized at church services back in the day, usually people would wear a different carnation color for their mother. So if your mother was still alive, you would wear a red carnation. If you had a mother who was deceased, you would wear a white carnation. And so you had that meaning of flowers then too. Now, Anna, unfortunately, after Mother's Day went through, she was very happy until it became very commercialized. And the people who picked that up were FTD. FTD actually commercialized Mother's Day and made it more into a floral holiday, a greeting card holiday. She didn't really like that anymore. So she wanted Mother's Day to cease and desist. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Anna the daughter, ended up dying. I know that's not funny, but anyway, when she died, she was penniless, she was poor, unfortunately, but FTD was the one who picked up all of the expenses for her burial. So that's how that story ended. I just wanted to talk to you a little more about carnations and how carnations can have a different meaning according to the different color of the flower. I've got just a few carnations here, and I wanted to show them to you today. Carnations are not always the favorite of everyone, but they are a very long-lasting flower. They have a really nice scent to them. And if you ever want to feather open a carnation, you just simply take it in your hand and gently open up the floral petals, and it becomes a little bit wider, but very long-lasting. If you had a yellow carnation, that would be jealousy. White carnation is pure love. Pink carnation is a mother's boundless love. A striped carnation, such as this pretty pink and burgundy, means I cannot be with you. If you had a green carnation, it would be new birth. Friendship would be the orange carnation, and mourning would be the dark carnation. So those are some of the different flower color meanings. It also happens with roses as well. And speaking of roses, I think we want to move back to Denise and look at the next arrangement that she's been working on.
Thank you, Jane, for the great information about the colors of the carnations. Isn't the language of flowers just so interesting?
It is. I love it.
So now we're going to come back to the design table a little bit. And this arrangement is more of your traditional style. I have the beautiful antique green hydrangeas. One of the things about the antique green hydrangea is, they change color with the seasons. So, like, I could order antique green hydrangeas in summer and they would be primarily green with just a little bit of red on the edge. But if I order the same antique hydrangea in fall, it'll come in more with a burgundy undertone and maybe more of a color difference, like 50% red, 50% green. So flowers are one of those things that they kind of change they change with the seasons. So here I'm starting to create an arrangement that I like to call kind of like a royal, refined beauty and love arrangement. Here we have beautiful purple roses. And one of the things about roses is, when someone calls the shop and orders flowers and you say, I would like pink roses. When I'm ordering the flowers for the shop, there's probably 20 different varieties of pink roses. It could be a light pink rose, it could be a hot pink rose, it could be a blush pink rose. So there's lots of different varieties of roses. Just like this is a newer variety of a purple rose. A lot of times when you have a rose and you ask for a purple rose, it comes in like that light lavender, kind of like a lilac-y color. The particular variety of this rose is called blueberry because you can see that the purple, there's a little bit of almost like a cranberry, kind of bluish undertone to it. And this is a beautiful rose, very popular in wedding work. So that's one of the reasons why I've chosen it for this beauty and love bouquet. And then another flower that we all know the meaning of this one is the beautiful red rose. And we all know that this means love. It's kind of like the most popular, most known floral meaning in the world is that a red rose means love. As Jane mentioned with the carnations, not only do the flowers have meanings, but the colors have meanings. And one of the things is the color purple. Whether it's in a fabric or whether it's in flowers, the color purple means royalty. So that's kind of how this is the love, beauty, and royalty arrangement. And for the purple, I'm also going to add in a stem of the purple Phalaenopsis orchids. And we're just going to kind of work those into the arrangement. And then another very interesting tidbit about flowers and about the Victorian era. As we all know, flowers are very popular in the United States, but they're also very popular around the world. And in England, when Princess Diana got married and Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle, when they all got married, in their bouquets, it's a tradition for them to have a little bit of myrtle in their bouquet. So because this is the love and royalty arrangement, I'm going to add a little bit of myrtle in there. And just another fun fact about the myrtle that's in the arrangement that Princess Diana, Kate Middleton, and Meghan Markle carried is all of that myrtle was actually picked from the same myrtle plant at, I think, Kensington Palace in England. So the meaning of flowers, you know, it's a worldwide and a universal language, and there's many traditions that were upheld way back in the Victorian era that are still upheld even now. So I hope you enjoyed the love, beauty, and royalty arrangement. And I think now we're going to return it back to Jane and find out some more fun facts about the language of flowers.
Thanks, Denise. That was a great introduction to roses, and I just wanted to talk to you more about roses and the meanings. The meanings really come down to colors, and the colors of roses are something that we're asked about quite often. People really do want to send flowers, roses especially, that have a certain meaning. So if we look at some of the pretty roses that we have in um, our cooler right now, we are out of red roses, which is very unusual for us, but with the Mother's Day holiday, a lot of the red roses were used on the market. But we do have some other really pretty roses to show you today. Typically, a bride might carry white roses, and white roses are always a sign of purity, of new beginnings. This is a beautiful, open white rose. Of course, red roses. We all know red roses mean I love you. A deep crimson rose, just like the carnation, would mean mourning. Pink rose, and there are different, as Denise mentioned, many different types and colors of pink roses. But pink is traditionally grace and happiness. I would say the light pink is more of the gracious rose, and the pink, the darker deep pink, is happiness, vibrancy. A lavender rose, love at first sight. It's hard to tell sometimes lavender, but if you compare it to the pink, you can really see how lavender that rose is. Really a popular rose right now. Orange rose is desire, enthusiasm, which of course you can see that in any orange. A coral rose is friendship, modesty, and sympathy. So we do use these in a lot of our sympathy work too, just a nice soft color. And then if you get into bicolor roses, perhaps there's more than one meaning in that. Typically, here we have a yellow and an orange. Let's see, if we combine the vibrancy of the orange with desire, you know this is a very desirable rose that I have right here. Oftentimes we'll get the white and red bicolor roses too, which is just pure love. So that's also a very popular one that we have. So roses are always traditionally used for any type of occasion. Roses are always the best type of flower that you can have. If we go on, we also talk about birthday flowers. Everyone knows that their birthday month will have a different flower associated with it. Denise, your birthday's in March. The daffodil means regard, devotion. My birthday's in January, so the carnation is my flower, and it means devoted love. For May, which we're in right now, we've got lily of the valley, which means sweetness, humility, the return of happiness. Let's say you were born in October, the calendula means great joy. So you can go online and you can find the meanings of the different flowers for your birth month as well. It seems that the language of flowers has really come full circle too. This book by Vanessa Diffenbaugh, The Language of Flowers, came out maybe about 7-8 years ago, and it is the modern version of The Language of Flowers. It's all about a woman who is aging out of the adoption system, and she needs to find a passion. She needs to find her new job, and that new job is as a floral designer. And she picks up on the language of flowers in this. So in the back of this book is Victoria's Dictionary of the Language of Flowers. So for the more modern version of the definitions of flowers, you may want to consult with this. It's in the back of this great book, or you can also find it online. But